Take them, take them all the way. My sin.
Y'all ready to hear a message? Got your coffee? You ready? Planted? You stuck? All right, let's go.
You know, I think there's talented people, and talented people are awesome to watch, but there are blessed people, and when the Spirit of God starts moving, and you start to feel, you start to experience God, and you know what I'm talking about. It's way different than entertainment. You know what I mean? There's truly a blessed spirit in it, and I have to tell you this, man, I enjoy playing with these guys. These guys are the real deal. I want to, I know a lot of musicians, and I've seen a lot of bands. I've been around music, and I'll put these guys up against anybody for the way they live and who they really are, and I'm proud to let my kids be around musicians like this. I want that kind of influence on my kids, so it's awesome. I took Justice. We had a date the other night, and if you guys don't do that, man, you ought to take your teenage daughters out. They're not as crazy as you think they are, or maybe they are. Maybe we're a little off, and that's where the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and that's not necessarily a good thing, right? I took her out, and we went to, Kim, I didn't tell you. Was Kim still in here? I went to All Shucks. I took Justice to All Shucks the other night. Now, if you've never been, it's a hole-in-the-wall kind of place, and but crab legs are Justice's favorite thing in the world, and so we went to All Shucks, and I was covered, from my elbows down with crab, and I had it on my face and in my beard, and she had it in her hair. We went off like if you've ever been to All Shucks, they just bring it out in like this trash can lid, and you just go for it. And it's every man for himself, and it's just awesome. But that's her favorite thing to eat. So we went there, and then we went and saw a movie. We went and saw Lincoln. Anybody seen Lincoln yet? Man, you have to see it. Now, I have to tell you this. Me and Justice were sitting there, and I was astonished at the number of old people coming in. And we were on the front row, because that's where I sit when we go to the movie. Like not the front, but the front of the little walkway section. Because, if I want to sit far enough back where it looks like a TV, I'll stay home. I'm there because I want it. I want the whole thing, you know what I'm saying? And so we're sitting there, and Justice is like, she looks at me, and I'm already thinking, golly, man, like we're the youngest people in here by at least 40 years. And I say we, And Justice said, Dad, there are a lot of old people in here. I said, well, yeah, they all voted for him. And it was like, these are the 1865 Republicans. So we were sitting there watching the movie, and here's what I realized, that we're getting very close to not being able to have certain things in movies because our kids don't understand. There's a scene in the movie where Abraham Lincoln is trying to get news about the battles going on, and they were using a telegraph. And Justice leans over to me and says, "What is that?" Yeah. And I said, "That's a telegraph." I said, "That's how they talked." And she said, "It's just going." She said, "How do they know?" And I'm like, "They know the code. There's a code. There's Morse code. They know. They understand by the dots and dashes what's coming across." And she was just totally blown away. And I started thinking, man, we've come a long ways. We have come a long way since the telegraph. I can imagine the first people that got telephones. I remember Dad telling me, what was your phone number? 2 longs and a short. That was Dad's phone number. Anybody remember that? 2 longs and a short? There's a couple of you. I'm like, Mayberry 12. I don't know. 2 longs and a short. And I was like, oh my goodness, man, we've come a long ways. When I was a kid, we lived in Martin's Mill, and we had a party line. Anybody remember party lines? What happened, for you guys who don't know, what happens back then is your neighborhood had a phone line. And so when the phone rang, like anybody could answer it. I mean, who knows who's going to be on the phone? Your neighbors listening. You could be in everybody's. Some of you guys would have ate this up. It was like you'd be in everybody's business, man. You know what's going on in the neighborhood. And it was kind of a wild thing. Do you guys remember? You used to only have to dial, like if you want to call somebody in Canton, you just have to dial 7, right? And the number, like 72527. You only had to dial 5 digits. Then you went to where you have to dial all the digits. Then you had to dial the area code. And I was like, man, my fingers were being worn out, all these numbers. And we got more and more phones. A friend of mine actually got a second phone in the house. Y'all remember your friends, your snooty friends who got a second phone line? Hated them, hated those people. They got a second phone line. In our house, we only had 1 phone line. And so you have to be careful because Mom and Dad could always pick up the phone but it wasn't like the old party line. Right, it's good. So things changed and we adapted. And I remember one time, I think Justice was little. She was like, what's that? We were watching TV and they had the thing on the wall and she pulled it and there was a cord attached to it. And she was like, what is that? And I'm like, that's a telephone. You used to have to be attached to it. It's an amazing thing how you had to be attached to the actual telephone. Then cell phones came out. Y'all remember when cell phones came out? Y'all remember the bag? Yeah, man. You had the bag for cell phones, and it was like, wait, it's like a field radio operator. You guys ever been in the military? You're carrying this big old box. I got to make a call. Justice was shocked when she first saw a rotary phone, and I'm probably pretty sure Ella's never seen one. Ella won't ever know what a phone in the house is like. We don't have a phone line. We built a house. We don't have a phone line to our house. There's never been a need for a phone line to our house. Now, Dish Network, you guys got Dish? They will jack you over the phone line, but that's a whole different story. We don't even have a phone line to our house. So we've gone from telegraph to not even having a phone line to our house. And I look at how my kids are going to start driving and going places, and I can't imagine sending my daughter out without a cell phone in a car. And I was thinking about, we would go on vacations across country, and you'd be out in the middle of nowhere, and there is no phone. You would have to go find a phone somewhere if you needed to call somebody. You'd just be broke down. You were just broke down, and I'm telling you, we didn't drive nice vehicles. I mean, the things were put together with duct tape and baling wire, and we're out in the middle of nowhere with no way to call anybody if there's a problem. But it's a lot different. I remember with every advancement in technology, there's always been this reluctancy for change. And do you remember the first cell phone service was pretty bad, right? They cost a bunch, and service was pretty terrible. There was complaints with having a phone on the party line because, there was always that lady on the party line that was always on the phone. My wife was mean. I'll tell you this. Celia, she was mean because she'd go, check, check, check. She'd be trying to get her neighbors off the phone line because, she's a teenage girl, and when you need a phone, right? Party lines, man. But I'm sure that when we went from telegraph to phones and you could barely understand, people were like, man, this phone stuff is for the birds. I wish we'd just stay with telegraph. Sometimes we get real familiar with things and we start to look at the future as if it's, it's a bad thing. But then we adapt and technology changes and we come into this age where it's like, okay, I can have a phone. I'll put a phone in my house. Or then it's like, well, I got a phone that don't even have wires to it in the house. And then we go, I've got cell phones. And now we've got not only cell phones, but we've got internet everywhere we are. We don't even have to be plugged in. Do you guys remember dial-up? Kids wouldn't know what to do. They would shoot themselves if they had to wait on dial-up. I mean, and this isn't that far back, right? Isn't it amazing what we kind of reject? Me and Celia were talking the other day when the internet first became popular. We had I don't remember what, it was a Macintosh computer. We had one, and we were trendsetters because we had a Mac before Mac was cool, right? And when you got on the internet back then, there really wasn't anything to do because internet was for government and businesses, and email was about all you really got. So I was like, ooh, internet. Are you online? Oh yeah, I'm on. Me and that other guy. You have internet, but there really wasn't much out there. And I remember them telling us in school, someday every TV commercial is going to have a www dot under the TV commercial. And we're like, well, what does that mean? We're like, who cares? We're still plugging our old 5.5 floppy disk into the old, what were those computers we used? Commodore 64s, man, programming it up. Things changed, and all of a sudden we become very dependent on the internet, and now we can carry around not even our plugged-in phone, but our cellular phone, and we can have internet access, and man, we can find out anything about anything at an instant. And I would say that that's good, that's good, but the reason that's good is because somebody went through the trouble of making the changes that were necessary at the time they needed to be made. When we went from telegraphs to phones, we were like, well, what are we going to do with all these telegraph wires? How are we going to, we've got all this invested. How can we just change? And then we got phones, and it's like, now we got phones. We've got all this invested. How can we go wireless? What are we going to do with all of these phone wires everywhere in the ground? Have anybody thought about that? Scrap metal, right? We're going to scrap them. I don't know what we're going to do with them, but they're everywhere, okay? And maybe we'll find another use for them. I'm not that much advanced into what we're going to do with those, but what I'm saying is that a lot of times dealing with the past, it's hard to let go of what we know and what is and make the changes to move into what will be. And Andy Stanley says in his book, Visioneering, what could be and what should be. And I think it's really no different in the church. I felt like in the church over the years, man, church holds on to things longer than any other organization in culture. I mean, I would never say who this person is or where this church is, but they were having a talk with me about how their wife is a Sunday school teacher and how this year she's going to give up flannel graph because she thinks the kids just aren't engaging it anymore. Now, I always thought that as a teacher it'd be cool to use a retro flannel graph for you guys because there's just something nostalgic about it, right? But it's not cutting edge by any means, right? Some of you guys are like, I don't even know what flannel graph is. The flannel graph was when, and here's the thing that always got me in church. I love this because Moses and Noah and Jacob were all the same guy. Like we wouldn't notice. Because our church evidently had some knuckleheads who lost Jacob. Now you always knew Jacob because, how'd you know Jacob? Coat of many colors. On flannel, you had Jacob always had the coat of many colors. You always knew Noah because he always had the ark, animals or something. You always knew Moses. For some reason, Moses could never drop the 10 Commandments. He sported in a cane and a staff, right? Moses always sported the 10 Commandments and a staff. I'm like, them things had to got heavy after a while. But we were a poor church, and we just had the same character for everybody. You had the kid character and the adult character, and they fit every story. And the thing is, times have changed, man. My Ella, she's 7, fixing to be 7 next month, and she's been playing video games on my phone since she was like, not even able to talk. And I'm like, this is amazing. Now, do you think a kid like that is going to be really into flannel graph? When everything in our life is high speed and visual, and it, you know, it's different characters for every person. But the church hangs on because, well, frankly, we fear change. We have a lot of fear, and we fear change because of a lot of reasons, but mostly we fear change because we believe what we've been doing is working. And we fear that if we do something different, it's not going to work. And I think that's the biggest fear. There's a lot of fears, but I think that's one of the biggest ones. And so you got we were in Colorado City in a Baptist church in Colorado City, and there was a war, and I mean a war raging over whether or not to bring in PowerPoint. Because, well, it's the devil. Everybody knows that. PowerPoint is the devil. And I bet now they've probably got PowerPoint since nobody in the world uses it anymore. Now they probably got it. This is, I don't know what the name of this is, but that's how all the stuff moves. And Song Show Plus, it's better. It's super mega sized. It's better because it moves, and we're visual, and we respond to movement, and it's better. We move, and anybody ever go to a church that when they brought in sound systems the first time? Anybody, you remember when sound systems came into church? And like, it was one speaker, and the only person, I mean, the sound systems weren't for the, it wasn't for the music, it was for the pastor. And you remember the, because it was just one terrible speaker, just, you know. And now, man, sound systems are huge. And I was reading about, I don't remember where I was reading. I was reading about Lakewood Church sound system they had to install, and it was unbelievable. It rivals anything you could ever imagine because they wanted it to where you could hear with crystal clear any seat in that stadium. Unbelievable. That's Joel Osteen's church, the old Rockets. What was it? It's not the Astro. It was what was it? Compact Center, where the Rockets played, right? Yeah. That's where we're moving, like, next. We're moving to the Canton Dome. I don't know where that is. The thing is, yeah, that's the thing, man. But here, you want to hear something crazy? As they move Lakewood Church into that arena, and each service will seat about 50,000 people. You realize Lakewood Church has 5 services a weekend? 5 services a weekend. Now that's a big church, man, right? That place is huge. Well, there's a lot of fear in that change. Nobody's ever had church in a stadium before. You know, that's a big deal. But, you know, it just wasn't working out. once I think anything over 10 or 11 services a weekend is just overkill. It's just too much. Here's the thing, what I want you to understand today is every year around this time of year, I'd like to talk to you about the future, about where we're going, about what I think God wants to do this year. And a lot of our culture and a lot of our society, man, the future is kind of bleak. It's kind of like, we don't know. It don't look good. The economists aren't optimistic. I really don't care what's on the news, man. If you talk to people, jobs are scarce and jobs are in danger. Salaries are gone down. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but you've already taken a pay cut, right? Did everybody notice when their FICA came out of their check this time, it was a lot more? And so you've already taken a pay cut this year, and I understand how that looks. So we're in an economic time that is not favorable. A lot of things that are going on in our country, in this part of the country, aren't favorable. Things that are going on in Washington, they aren't favorable in this part of the country. And you got to remember, man, our government governs for New York and L.A., not for Canton. And so, there is a part of the country where things just are not like everybody else thinks they should be or whatever. And changes take place, and that's all good. But what I want to talk about is, what does this year look like for us? And what I want you to know is, this year, for the first time in at least the last 9 years, 8 years, is going to look radically different. And that's scary for me, and it might catch a lot of you guys a little off, but things are going to look different, and it's going to be good, though. I see this year, our church in an explosion of people, of ministry. As the world generally turns sour, the church usually responds, because people when they suffer and when they struggle and when they hurt, they generally will turn to hope. And the church should be filled with hope. And when you have a really horrible week and a horrible outlook, and you come in and you experience the presence of God like in worship, how many of you guys were thinking about your life 30 minutes ago while we were in worship? I mean, how many of you were mulling over the troubles and the problems? I mean, there's something about it that just lifts you out of it. When the Spirit of God starts moving, there truly is freedom, right? We get set free, and we start to long for that. And when we find that place, we want more of it, and we want to tell our friends about it. And so what I see is that people are going to turn, and they're looking for something. They're looking for hope. They're looking for life. And what I really hope is that this place is that. I hope for our community that this place is that life. I told you I've been reading in Ecclesiastes still, and I was just going through this verse. And you guys remember, was it the Birds that sing that song, Turn, Turn, Turn? Remember? I was reading Ecclesiastes. That's where it comes from anyway. And it says, for everything there is a reason, and for every time, and a time for every matter under heaven. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 3. There's a season for everything and a time for everything. He goes into this. There's a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And every time I read that, I go Kevin Bacon, Footloose, right? And I want to dance. You don't want to see that. Justice tried to get me. You know the dance at the end of the show? Justice tried to get me to know. It's like, no. I'll hurt something bad to be out. Anyway, it goes on. There's a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time to peace. The next verse after that, in verse 11, it says, and he has made everything beautiful in its own time. Everything. And when you go through that list, there's a time for war and a time for peace, a time for hate and a time for love. And he's made everything beautiful in its time. And maybe what we see doesn't look beautiful at the time. But maybe in its time, everything looks beautiful because God has a time and a plan and a purpose for absolutely everything that goes on that's in our world. And there's a time set apart for this. And we were created in this place, in this time, for this time. Do you realize that? You are not an accident. We are here, gathered together. We live here. We were born here, raised here, moved here. Somehow we came here in this exact time, in this moment in history, for a very specific reason. Because God has a plan for us. That plan, consequently, includes you. Now, here's the greatest thing about this year that will set this year apart from every other year. Is that this church is you, made up by you, for our community, to make our world a better place. And a lot of you guys came here, and when you came here, there was a staff here at this church who did the ministry, and you were supportive, and you would work with them and help them, and that's kind of the way it is. And I have to tell you, man, that this church has had the greatest staff in the history of the world as far as church staffs go. If you've ever been around any of them or worked with them, they're just the best people ever. I mean, they care to the pit of who they are about you. And it's not a job and it's not a have to. It's a genuine care for making our world a better place. And this week I had the hardest week I've had in probably my life, because the people I love the most and my friends, I had to let go this week. I had to let our entire church staff go this week. Our church doesn't have a paid staff anymore. Over the last 2 to 3 years, our finances have dwindled and dwindled until we made cuts and made cuts and made cuts. And there were no more cuts to make. And so the reality is that I was the one who had to put my friends out of jobs. And that's hard. It's a heavy weight and heavy responsibility. But here's the greatest part about this, is the response wasn't negative. The response was positive. That's okay. Don't put yourself in. Don't take that responsibility, Todd. Don't put yourself in that feeling. We see this as opportunity. This is unbelievable. That these people care so much that they see that this year is the opportunity. Now we don't have a staff. If we're going to have church, it's on us all. And that scares me. I mean, I look out here and it terrifies me. No, I'm just kidding. I look out here and I see your potential, and I see that so many of you guys have so much to offer, and you've been sitting on the sidelines for so long because, well, there was somebody else doing it. You have an opportunity right now this year to not just go to this church, but to become this church. The ministry of this church now is you. It is you. It's not a staff of people here to serve you and minister to you. You are the ministers. You are the servants. You are the body of Christ. You are the church. If anything is going to happen here, you're the ones who are going to do it. And it's going to change everything. And I understand for a lot of people, man, that makes you very uncomfortable. You're like, man, I really like things the way it was. Well, I do too. But maybe, have you ever thought maybe we've just been using telegraph? And maybe it's time to get on cell phones. Maybe what's been holding us up is that the church has been the staff and a few key volunteers. And you guys have been great to help. I mean, our staff, man, we appreciate everything. You guys have been awesome to help. But now, we don't need your help. We need you to do it. It's the way we started the church. We've come full circle in 10 years. It's the way this church started. And what I missed from when it started was that the ownership of this body. People owned this place. They were passionate. People would fight you if you talked about this place. Now people are indifferent. You can talk about the church, nobody really cares. But when you own it, when you're the one doing it, when you're putting it all out there, then you'll fight for it. Somebody talks about your church, there's a time for that. No, I mean, it's, no, I mean, there is a time to fight, right? I was telling Kim earlier, man, that movie Lincoln just so moved me because I had and I guess I did, but I hadn't really thought it through. But we think of Lincoln and what he did as a president is just unbelievable. It's the greatest thing that could have happened in the history of the world. I mean, he opened a movement for the equality of people, like something like an idea that God created all of us and loves us all and thinks the world of all of us. And I think he was a great man, but what I saw was you would think Lincoln shows up 9 foot tall with his big hat on and walking like, I mean, he's just bigger than life. And Lincoln walks in and the whole world just turns over for him, man. It's like, man, let's get this amendment. Let's get this amendment passed. Let's get this amendment ratified. And what I've realized in the movie is that we do nothing great without opposition. There had been no great things done in this world that weren't fought for. And I had to really look at myself and say, do I want to be great? Or do I want to be average? Do I want to get by? Do I want the least path of least resistance? Or do I want to be so passionate about something that I'm willing to die for it? When was the last time that you were ever so passionate about something that you literally were willing to die for it? It's an important question. Because if we're not passionate enough about anything to fight over it, to die for it, then we really don't care. The honest truth is we don't care about our marriages if we're not willing to fight for them. If we're not willing to fight for our kids, if we're not willing to fight for our marriages, we really don't care. If we're not willing to fight for our church, then we really don't care. If we're not willing to fight for our community, we really don't care. I was the worst Canton High School student ever. Close, though. You might have been, well. If you would have talked about my school, I would have said, yeah, you're right. Dude, I had no school spirit. I didn't care. If you said our football team stunk, I'd be like, they sure do. They're terrible, horrible, which would have been true. You could have said anything. I didn't care. There was no passion there. And And then you start to look at life, and it's like, well, what are you passionate about? You know, you're 17, you don't care about school, you don't care about this, you don't care about that, you don't care about any of this stuff. You get to be 19, you get to be 20, 24, 25, 30. And it's like all of a sudden your life's passing you by. And I have to ask you, what do you care about? What moves you? What just does it for you? What is that thing in your life that is worth dying over? That is worth fighting for? And when you find that thing that's worth fighting for and worth dying over and worth going and getting in somebody's grill about it. I've been very passive over the last few years. I've taken a beating. But I'll tell you what, you want to talk about my church, I'm going to have a problem with you. This is the greatest place on earth. This is God's kingdom, and He has called me into this, and He has brought you here to be part of this. And when you take that kind of ownership and you grab that kind of passion and you start to say, you know what? I can be part of this. I can make this thing go. I will do whatever it takes. I will take my time and my energy and I will pour into it because I believe my friends need this place. I believe my sons and daughters need this place. I believe that my uncles and aunts and relatives need this place. I believe that the kids in the school need this place. If we get that kind of passion and drive about this, then this year is going to look so much more different because it's not going to be me being a cheerleader for this place and trying to keep you hanging on. It's going to be your place, and you're going to fight for it, and you're going to defend it. And you're not going to let anybody take it from you. And when you do that, our community is going to change. When you're in a world like we live in, man, drugs and alcohol and addictions, they start to just consume our culture, our world. And you're going to fight for those people. You're going to fight for their lives. You're going to fight for their sobriety. You're going to fight for their victory. You are. You're going to learn. You're going to figure out a way to do that. When people give up and quit and slip off in a hole and get into their depressions, you're going to annoy them. You're going to call them out. You're going to reach out, and you're going to be that friend. And here's the thing, man, you have to do it. There's not going to be anybody to do it. You're going to have to do it. And we're going to have a shift, and we're going to have a reputation as a church with hundreds of pastors, hundreds of leaders, hundreds of people who are ministering. And you're going to face opposition, and you're going to be criticized. I was shocked at how Lincoln was criticized, how he was called everything in the world. He was called a dictator, a control freak, King Lincoln. He was hated by everybody. Even his wife wanted him to quit. But see, he had seen something that was worth dying for. I've seen something that's worth giving your life to. And if you're out there and you're sitting there and wondering, what is it? Is there anything worth giving your life to? Because things in this world pass away and they're so temporary. This is not. This is God's kingdom. It's eternal. It's going to go on long after you and I. God's kingdom is going to exist long after you and I. But are we willing to do something great right now? Are we willing to step up in the opposition this year and change this place? To where it becomes a whole lot less of a staff-driven church, to where everybody contributes and everybody pours in And everybody picks each other up. And everybody has something to offer. I hope that you don't miss this opportunity. I hope that you don't miss the opportunity to step up here and pour yourself into this. I hope you don't miss that opportunity. I hope that you get to experience just a portion. If it's only just a portion you get to put in, I hope you get to experience what we've got to experience, what our staff's got to experience over the last few years, several years. It's been unbelievable. It's been incredible. But it's going to be different. And I would say it's going to be better. I would say that it's going to be better for our community. I would say it's going to be better for you. I would say that this is just the beginning of something that is going to redefine not only this church, but how church is done. That's what I really believe. I believe we have the perfect opportunity to change the way church is in this world. I feel like that because of who we are and because of who you are, that there's no reason that we can't touch every broken life in this community and bring healing to this community and the people who live here, that it will be a privilege and an honor to live and be part of this community because of this group of people. That you're going to make your schools better, that you're going to make your organizations better, that you're going to make your communities that you live in better, that you're going to make this place better. That's where we're going. That's what this year looks like. It's going to change the way you come to church. Instead of coming to church to receive, you're going to have to come to give. Instead of coming and being ministered to, you better have your ministering shoes on. Because let me tell you something, if I know you've been through something and somebody comes to me with an issue, guess who's getting them to them? I'll put you on the spot. I'm not afraid. I'm going to have Branda's talk next weekend. How's that for the spot? You told me to just make you. I think she's got something to say to you, and I think it's a time that you need to hear what she has to say. That's what I really think. But I'm going to put you on the spot too. Now, did that make everybody else uncomfortable or just Branda's? I'll call you out. If I know that you've overcome and that you are healthy and you've recovered from addictions, and I have people come with addictions, guess who they're talking to? They're going to be talking to you. You better get ready. You better get ready. If I have people come to me suffering from depression and I know that you've been in there, guess who they're coming to talk to? They're coming to talk to you. Why wouldn't it be that way? Are we some kind of church organization? Do we just build buildings and put up steeples and have church? Or are we just a group of people who have been through struggles, some have overcome, and some are coming into them? Aren't we just people? Aren't we just a group of people who have this place in common and maybe some other things in our lives? Why does it have to all be labeled? Why does it all have to be fancy, all be structured? We're just people, right? I'm just a person. You're just a person. What makes me any more qualified than you? Do you know Jesus? Do you love Him? Has He radically changed your life? Did you used to be this way and now you're this way, but you don't have it all together yet? Welcome to the club. That's you and about everybody else. We all have struggles. And if you think you've got it together, then you got pride issues and you're going backwards, not forward. So, just a little heads up. Just people. We're just people. And to me, man, that's really what the church should be from anyway, right? It shouldn't be buildings and steeples. It's just a group of people who live in the same place and come to the same gatherings. You guys know that's why this place is the Blue Room, right? I want you to understand that. I'm so sick of the church being a building, so I just changed the name of the building. Don't fix that. People are like, that's confusing. I'm like, good, it's about time. It's about time. I love you guys. I think you're the greatest group of people God's ever assembled together, and I really believe that He has unbelievable things in store for us. And I believe that there is a time for everything under heaven. And it may not be what we wish for, what we thought it should be, but it is what it is. And what do we do with it? Well, we adapt, because this place is worth keeping here, don't you think? I mean, that was our options, is to ride it till it doesn't exist anymore or make moves to do what we have to do. And we'll do everything we can and everything we have to do, because this place is important enough to be here. It's important enough to be here. It's impacted and changed my life, and I know hundreds, if not thousands, of people whose lives have been impacted and changed in this place. And I say we just do it another year and just do it different. And when that year is over and the next season's here, we'll see what it looks like then. And then we'll see what it looks like after that. And then we'll see what it looks like after that. I'm not going anywhere. It's worth dying over to me. It's worth dying over. I hope you're not discouraged. I hope you're encouraged. I hope that maybe you're in the same place our staff's in. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe things are falling apart in your life. You know what? You can look at those things as terminal, or you can see those things as opportunities. There's two ways to look at it. What do you got to lose? You've got an opportunity set before you to totally do something different. Take a chance. Do something you've never done before. It's a great opportunity. Or you can get depressed about it and you can just sit and mope and hope and whine and whimper. It's that way, but it doesn't have to be. This could be horrible. We could come out here and get depressed and say, this is just the end of the world. Well, it could be, but it's not. This is an opportunity for God to do something unbelievable here. I want to pray for you. If you guys will stand up with me.